I was standing in line at the clinic when I realized that the doctor who was supposed to terminate my pregnancy was the very man with whom I'd spent that night 3 months ago. He looked at me, and in his eyes there was no judgment or surprise, only calmness, as if he had been waiting for this meeting. But then, on that October night at the Stardust Club, I didn't know that this half-conscious man in a dirty shirt would become the father of my child. I only knew one thing. My husband Jake was kissing a 20-year-old girl right at our beauty salon's corporate party without hiding or being embarrassed that half of our employees could see it. 8 years of marriage crumbled in an instant. 8 years of building a business together, sharing a bed, planning children that never came to be. Jake used to say, "There's time, Emily. Don't rush." It turned out he was the one rushing into the arms of the intern makeup artist. I rushed out of the club without my coat, and the December air hit my face like a slap. Near the back entrance, a man lay there, not old, about 35, all crumpled, drunk, with a busted lip. The club's security guards stood over him, discussing what to do. "He's got papers. Alive. Let him lie there," said one. "Just toss him out of the gates. No need to fuss," replied the other. I still don't understand what came over me. Maybe in his face I saw the same pain I felt myself. Maybe I just wanted to do something insane that would cause Jake the same pain he caused me. "He's an acquaintance of mine," I said to the guards. "I'll take him." The man barely stood on his feet, but when I took his arm, he looked at me with surprisingly clear eyes. "Thank you," he croaked. "No, don't speak," I said. "Just come along." We caught a taxi. He named an address in Brooklyn, a quiet street with old houses. In the car, he was silent, leaning against the window, while I thought about doing something irreparable. But the thought of Jake possibly searching for me in the club pushed me forward. His apartment turned out to be surprisingly clean for a bachelor. Medical books, a tidy kitchen, fresh sheets on the bed. He apologized and went into the shower, while I stood in the middle of the unfamiliar living room, not understanding why I had come here. When he came out clean, in home clothes with wet hair, I saw a completely different person. Tired, but handsome. "My name is Michael," he said, "and I don't understand why you helped me." I didn't answer. Instead, I approached him and kissed him. He didn't resist, nor did he show initiative. He simply let me do what I wanted. We made love slowly, cautiously, as if both understood it was a way to forget pain, not find happiness. In the morning, I woke up to the smell of coffee. Michael was in the kitchen, already dressed, reading something on his phone. 2 cups and a plate of toast stood on the table. "Good morning," he said without raising his eyes. "I don't know your name." A wave of shame washed over me. What had I done? Cheated on my husband with a stranger just because I caught him with a girl? It was absurd, like a childish reaction. "Emily," I replied, grabbing my things. "I need to go." "Wait," he tried to stop me. "Maybe you can tell me what happened yesterday." "Nothing happened." I was already wearing my shoes. "I'm sorry, it was a mistake." I ran out of the apartment, not listening to his response. Jake met me at home, sitting in the kitchen with a cup of coffee as if nothing had happened. He even smiled when I came in. "Here's my runaway," he said. "Got scared at the corporate party? You should have warned me. I would have escorted you." I stood in the doorway, looking at this person with whom I had lived for 8 years. How could he speak so calmly to me when just a few hours ago he was kissing another? "Jake," I began. "By the way," he interrupted me. "I've been thinking, maybe it's really time for us to have kids. You wanted them. The salon now is stable. We can afford it." He spoke so naturally that for a moment I doubted myself. Had I truly seen what I saw? Could it have been just friendly interaction that I misunderstood? "What do you think?" Jake asked, approaching me. You're a bit strange. Is everything okay?" He hugged me, and I smelled the familiar scent of his cologne, mixed with someone else's perfume. A subtle sweet scent that was definitely not mine. "Where were you last night?" I asked. "Looking for you," he replied without blinking. "Then I went home. Thought you'd already be here." "And where were you?" A bold-faced lie. The most brazen, cynical lie. And he didn't even try to make it plausible. The next 3 weeks passed in some strange game. Jake acted like the perfect husband. Bought flowers, suggested romantic dinners, talked about our future. And I pretended to believe him, trying to forget that night with Michael. But forgetting was impossible. Not because I fell in love with the stranger. No, it was just a mistake, a momentary weakness. But now there was a secret between Jake and me that grew heavier every day. I tried to return to normal life. Worked at the salon, met friends, went to the movies with Jake, but inside, anxiety grew as if I was standing at the edge of a cliff, knowing that sooner or later I would fall. And I fell the morning when I woke up feeling nauseous and realized that my period was late. 10 days late. I bought the pregnancy test at a pharmacy across Manhattan, as if someone could recognize me and report back to Jake. The 2 lines appeared immediately, bright and clear. I sat in the bathroom on the closed toilet lid, staring at those lines. A child. But whose? Jake and I had been intimate the same week I'd been with Michael. Mathematically, either could be the father, but by dates, there was a greater chance it was the stranger from that night. I hid the test in my makeup bag and walked out to Jake, who was having breakfast, reading the news on his phone. "How's it going, honey?" he asked, not looking up from the screen. "Fine," I replied. And that was the first lie in our new life that had already begun. For 2 weeks, I carried this secret like a ticking time bomb. Every morning, I woke up with the thought, today I'll tell Jake. Every evening, I went to bed, still having said nothing. I tried to convince myself the child was Jake's. I counted days, reread articles about conception, searched for any proof of my belief. If Jake stopped his affairs, if we truly became a family, maybe everything would sort itself out. Maybe I could forget that night and live as if it hadn't happened. But Jake didn't stop. He became more cautious, but more dishonest. Stayed late at work, took calls in another room, placed his phone face down during dinner. I saw these little signs and knew that nothing had changed. He had simply learned to hide better. And the nausea intensified. In the mornings, I barely made it to the bathroom, and Jake would ask if I might have caught a cold. I'd nod and run to vomit, thinking how absurd everything had become. On Wednesday evening, I couldn't take it anymore. Jake was watching baseball, and I sat by my laptop, pretending to work on salon reports. In reality, I was reading pregnancy forums, trying to understand when it was best to do a DNA test. Jake's phone lay on the sofa between us. It was pinging with messages for half an hour, but Jake didn't pay attention, too absorbed in the match. Notifications appeared on the screen, and I involuntarily saw the first lines. "Jake, I miss you. When will we see each other? Can't wait any longer. You promised you'd talk to your wife. Talk to your wife. Meaning he wasn't just having fun, he was planning to leave, planning to abandon me for the 20-year-old girl who worked at our salon. I stood up and went to the bedroom. My hands trembled as I opened the drawer where my documents lay. I needed to find the number for the gynecological clinic, schedule an abortion, immediately. If Jake was leaving, I couldn't face this alone. Not with a child whose paternity was in question, not at 28 when I'd have to start life anew. I dialed the clinic number with shaking fingers. Manhattan Women's Health Center, answered a dispassionate female voice. I need to schedule... I fell silent. I couldn't say that word. An abortion, the woman clarified. How far along? About 6 weeks. We can offer tomorrow at 9 a.m. or the day after at 11. Tomorrow, I said quickly, so I wouldn't change my mind. At 9. When I returned to the living room, Jake was still watching TV. His phone lay in the same spot, continuing to ping. Emmy, he said, not taking his eyes off the screen. Tomorrow I'll be late. Tom and I have a meeting with the cosmetics suppliers. Tom is our director, an honest and straightforward man. If there was truly a meeting, he would have told me. Okay, I replied. This lie was the last straw. In the morning, while Jake showered, I dressed and left the house. The clinic greeted me with the smell of antiseptic and silence. I sat among other women, some young, some not, alone and accompanied. No one spoke. Everyone stared at their phones or the floor. They called my name at 9:30. I stood on shaky legs and followed the nurse down the corridor. She opened an office door and said, "Go to Dr. Michael Stone." Michael sat behind the desk in a white coat, neatly styled hair with an attentive gaze. He raised his eyes from the medical record and froze for a second, recognizing me. "Emily," he said quietly. I couldn't move. Of all the doctors in the city, of all the clinics, it was he who was supposed to end my pregnancy, a pregnancy that might be his. "Please sit down," Michael said, indicating the chair in front of the desk. I sat, clutching my purse. The office was very quiet, only the ticking of the wall clock and faint street noise. "Are you sure about your decision?" he asked, flipping through my file. "Yes," I answered, but my voice faltered. Michael put the file aside and looked at me. There was no judgment or surprise in his eyes, only sadness. "Let me tell you a story," he said. "In October, the evening we met, I was burying my father. He died of cancer, suffered for 6 months. We held the wake at that club because my dad loved jazz, and Stardust was his favorite place. I listened, not understanding where he was leading. After the wake, I got drunk for the first time in my life," Michael continued. "Couldn't bear the thought that he was gone. The guards tossed me outside, and I thought I'd just stay lying in the dirt. Then you appeared." He fell silent, gazing out the window. "You saved me that night, not just from the cold, from despair. And now what?" I asked. "Now I have to kill someone who could have been our child?" The word "our" hung in the air between us. We both understood that such a possibility existed. "It's not your problem," I said. "I have a complicated situation at home. I can't—" "You can," he interrupted. "You're just afraid." Tears surged to my throat. He was right. I was afraid of being alone, afraid of judgment, afraid of responsibility. "My husband is cheating on me," I blurted out. "He's planning to leave for someone else." "And that's why you decided to kill the baby?" Michael asked calmly. "Don't say it like that," I sobbed. "How else?" He stood up from his desk. "Emily, I won't dissuade you if you truly want this, but answer honestly. Did you come here because you don't want the child, or because you're afraid of difficulties?" I sat in silence, wiping tears. "Think again," Michael said. "You have time until tomorrow. If the decision doesn't change, come back, and I'll do everything properly." I stood and went to the door, but he stopped me. "Emily, whatever you decide, you're not alone. Remember that." I ran out of the office and only realized outside that I had forgotten to take the ultrasound referral. It lay on Michael's desk, a gray paper slip with a blurred image of a tiny bean-sized creature. I returned home in the evening. Jake wasn't there. He was delayed with his mistress. That night, I lay awake, beside a snoring Jake, and gently touched my belly, trying to feel something. It was too early, but I felt as though I sensed a faint flutter inside. By morning, the decision had formed by itself. I wouldn't go through with the abortion, not because I had changed my mind about Jake. He hadn't come home until midnight, reeking of unfamiliar perfume and lying about the meeting, but because I realized that if I terminated this pregnancy out of fear, I would regret it for the rest of my life. Jake left for work as usual, kissed me on the crown and mumbled something about love. I waited until the door closed behind him, packed my belongings in 2 suitcases, and called a taxi. Mom welcomed me without questions. She opened the door, saw the suitcases, and simply said, "Come in, sweetheart." In my old room, nothing had changed. The same floral wallpaper, the same springy bed, the same photographs on the wall. Only now, everything seemed smaller and more comforting. I told her everything over a cup of tea. About Jake and his mistress, about that night with Michael, about the pregnancy and my visit to the clinic. Mom listened silently, occasionally nodding. When I finished, she took my hand. "You know, when I was pregnant with you, your father cheated on me too. With a secretary, as ridiculously cliché as it sounds. I found out in the 3rd month." "Why did you never tell me?" I asked. "I didn't want you growing up thinking all men are like that," she replied. "But now you need to know. I chose you. Not him. Not our marriage. You. And I've never regretted it." The phone was buzzing with calls from Jake. I didn't answer. That evening, he showed up at my mom's, ringing the doorbell, shouting beneath the windows. Mom went out to him and said something. He left. The next day, he sent a message. "I'm sorry. I'll fix everything. Come back." I deleted his number. A week later, I scheduled an appointment with another gynecologist. A woman. She confirmed the pregnancy and assured me everything was fine. I looked at the ultrasound monitor, where a tiny dot, my baby's heart, was pulsing, and I smiled. On Friday evening, there was a knock at the door. I opened it to find Michael standing there with a bouquet of daisies. "Sorry for intruding," he said. "But I had to know. You didn't come to the clinic. So, I'm keeping the baby," I replied, "regardless of who the father is." He handed me the flowers and a business card. "Here's my personal number. If you need help, any kind, call." I took the card. Our fingers touched. "Thank you," I said. "For the flowers and for that conversation at the clinic." Michael smiled. "No, thank you. For your courage." 3 months passed. My belly was already slightly noticeable, and I began wearing loose dresses. Jake sent divorce papers. I signed them unread. He left me the apartment and part of the business. Perhaps he felt guilty, or simply wanted to start anew quickly with his young mistress. Michael called every week, inquiring about my well-being. Sometimes he brought vitamins or fruit. We didn't speak of that night or the potential paternity. We simply communicated as friends. He shared stories about work. I shared plans to open my own salon. One evening, while we were strolling in the park, he asked, "Do you want to know for sure who the father is?" I shook my head. No, it's my child. Only mine. At 5 months, the ultrasound showed it would be a girl. I watched the screen as she sucked her thumb and kicked her legs and reflected on how peculiarly life is arranged. Sometimes you have to lose everything to find what's most important. Michael waited for me in the hallway after the examination. "Is everything all right?" he asked. "Yes," I replied. "Do you want coffee? Oh, I mean, you can't. How about carrot juice?" I laughed. "I'd like that. And you know what else? I've picked a name. Sophia. After my grandmother." "Sophia," he repeated thoughtfully. "A beautiful name." We strolled along the street, with the autumn sun warming our backs. Ahead lay an entire life, mine and little Sophia's. And perhaps, beside us, Michael would walk. Or perhaps not. But it no longer mattered. The most important decision had already been made. "You know," Michael suddenly said, stopping. "What?" "That evening at the club. It wasn't a coincidence. I believe nothing is ever by chance." I looked at him and saw in his eyes the same thing I felt inside. Hope. "I believe that too," I replied, and took his hand. "Did you like the story? Write your opinion in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next interesting story. See you tomorrow.